Coming up in this week's Torah Pearls.
Am I missing something? Or is there like a 38-year gap in the book of Numbers?
The Dead Sea Scroll 4Q27 Numbers contains a lot of additional text to this week's Torah portion. What is it, and where does it come from?
Are you telling me that we have two different locations for the place where Aaron supposedly died?
The terms Torah, Mitzvot, Chukkat, are they separate categories of law?
How many Meribah stories are there in the Pentateuch?
Did the Israelites journey through Edom and Moab, or did they just skirt the border?
All right, Jono, let's jump in.
Let's start. G'day dear viewers, and thank you for your company once again here on truth2u.org. That's truth number 2, letter U.org. I'm Jono Vandor, and joining me from the Horeb Institute all the way from Louisiana is, of course, Ross Nichols, the author of the Moses Scroll. G'day, mate.
Hello, Jono. How are you, my friend?
I am doing pretty well, thank you, my friend. And we do have a lot. There's a lot in this. There's actually more than I thought there would be.
Man, this thing is packed. It really is.
It's
got some good stuff.
Quickly through it. We are in doing Torah Pearls Season 3. And we're in Numbers chapter 19. This is Chukkat, and it kicks off with our Red Heifer. We're going to be talking about that and a whole, but there's a lot in this, like the Nehushtan. We've done a program on that. We'll put a link below to that program as well. But before we get into it, Ross, we have Ezra, our AI critical scholar. Ezra, please give us an academic summary of our Torah portion.
Oh, Chukkat. Yes, this portion is absolutely bursting at the seams. Academically speaking, it's one of the densest in Numbers, with a fascinating mashup of priestly ritual, narrative transitions, and some literary whiplash. We open with the Red Heifer ritual, which is like a ritual paradox. It purifies the impure, but renders the pure impure. It's deeply priestly in language and function, likely from the P source, showing that purity in Israel's cult is more than hygiene. It's about liminality, boundary, and access to sacred space. And remember, it's ashes plus water, not soap and water. Then, suddenly, we fast forward nearly 40 years with no narrative markers. Boom. Miriam dies. Boom. Moses strikes the rock. Boom. Aaron dies. This middle section is where the transition to the wilderness generation's conclusion becomes unmistakable. These aren't just deaths. They're the symbolic passing of an era. Moses' act at Meribah, striking instead of speaking, has puzzled scholars for centuries. Was it disobedience? A failure of faith, or a polemic layered in by the Deuteronomists to explain why Moses doesn't enter the land? Take your pick. Either way, it's a hinge moment in his arc. The serpent story? Pure ideological gold. The bronze serpent on a pole to cure snakebite sounds like Near Eastern sympathetic magic, but it's also a theological turn. The people must look up to something lifted to be saved. It may reflect older pre-monotheistic traditions domesticated into Yahwism. And tucked into all this are snippets of territorial movement, wars with Sihon and Og, and a couple of old poetic fragments, possibly among the oldest Israelite texts in the Tanakh, slipped right into the prose like hidden relics. So yes, Chukkat is packed, but theologically and literarily, it's a bridge text. It shows a people between death and destiny, ritual and rebellion, wandering and war.
Chukkat.
Chukkat. Let's go,
Chukkat.
Man. Let's get into Chukkat.
Torah portion, Chukkat.
Don't make fun. Sorry, Ezra. Sorry. That's okay. Ezra does a great job at translating and transliterating, and sometimes those Hebrew words transliterated into English just stump the old boy. It's Chukkat, and I'm ready to go. And I like Chukkat. Let's call it Chukkat.
Let's stick with Chukkat. All right. Now, speaking of Chukkat, here's a question, Ross. I'm interested in your opinion. Is Chukkat, now usually Chukkat is translated as statutes, right? And we have what might be different categories, and I know there's a lot of discussion about how do we categorize these? What we have is we've got mitzvot, we have Chukkat, we have Torah, we've got all these different categories, and are they actually different categories, or are they just different descriptions, or is it emphatic? Is it emphasis? What do you think?
I tell you, they do have different meanings, and they do seem to relate to different types of, let's use the broad term, law. I really like this word. Now, a lot of people don't understand it. I have heard people I don't know where they get these ideas, but some associate a chok het kof as a certain legal term, and then they just, I don't know where they get the definition. But here's what it really means. If you look it up in most standard dictionaries, good Bible and dictionaries, what you're going to find is that it means, at its root meaning, is to cut or to carve in. And so I like this particular phrase. We see this in the Moses scroll as well. Statutes and judgments. Statutes are kuchim. And so a lot of times people associate, they say, well, the 10 words aren't statutes. Those are this other kind of law, whatever people make it up to mean. But literally it means something that's cut or carved in. So the words on stone tablets, they're really not 10 commandments. That's a misnomer. It's the 10 words. But the 10 words are made up of things which are engraved or cut into stone.
Engravings.
Yeah,
so,
engravings, yeah.
To be more mechanical, we could say engravings. I like that. I think that's good.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Engravings HaTorah. It's found in one other place, that phrase, in Numbers chapters 31-21. And curiously, Numbers chapter 31, verse 23 also mentions the water of lustration. Ross, we're going to be talking about that, Midah, which appears in this chapter as well, 5 times in verse 9, 13, 20, and twice in 21. So the phrase Chukkat, HaTorah, is not found in the Moses scroll, but we do have Torah, we have mitzvot, and we do have Chukkat, and Chukkat, and they're used at all 3 of these are used at the end of the blessings and the curses. So as we know, for those that have read the Moses scroll,
let me make sure I didn't miss. I want to make sure I heard you right, because in the root word is found in the Moses scroll. Did I misunderstand that?
Yeah, the root is there.
Okay,
right.
yeah.
And it is translated. You have translated it as statutes. I like engravings. I think that's even better.
Mm-hmm.
And the Levites, what happens is we have Ibal Gerizim. We have the 12 tribes divided, one half on this side, one half on the other side, the entrance to the land, if you like. And at the entrance of the land, the Levites call out and pronounce the blessings and the curses, the conditions of the contracts, if you like, to which the tribes of Israel agree. And at the end of it all, the Levites refer to the 10 words and their corresponding blessings and curses as Torah, mitzvot, and statutes. So, but it is the 10 words. So it seems like it's all encompassing. It's combined. It's emphatic. That seems to be the way that it's used in the Moses scroll.
Yeah. Yeah, because and in fact, the 10 words have a combination of different things. A statute, as something which is engraving, is one way you could describe all of them. But then within that, there are these other categories too. So interesting. Interesting.
So there's the Chukkat. The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, "This is the ritual law that Jehovah has commanded. Instruct the Israelite people to bring you a red cow without blemish, and in which there is no defect, not just without blemish, but also no defect, and on which no yoke has been laid." You're going to give it to Eleazar, the priest. Okay, so last week, considering everything that has been going on the last few weeks in Israel, I would forgive anyone for speculating that we are witnessing fulfillment of prophecy. Again, we may do another show on that. That's not this show. But I did say we're going to see some articles in the news.
Did you find anything about red cows? Okay,
we absolutely do. So let me just have a quick look at these now. Charisma Magazine never fails.
Absolutely not.
Likes a bit of prophecy and red heifer goodness. Red heifers, temple plans, and end time signs. What's unfolding right now? That goes into some detail. That was the 27th of June. Then we it has a reference from there to Charisma News. It talks about the red heifers, and here's what you need to know. That's from February. We have another one from TRT Global, and this one is called The Zionist Agenda. Could Israel target Alaska and pin the blame on Iran?
Did you say Alaska or Al-Aqsa?
Alaska. And
Okay.
Alaska. Well, we don't
Yeah.
need Alaska. They could do that too. And it's too cold there. And
that's right.
And then, so just from that, okay, check off the list, just reading from that one, checked off the list 5 red heifers. And it goes on to talk about in 2022, activists from the Temple Institution imported 5 unblemished red heifers from Texas, classifying them as pets to bypass livestock restrictions, but their real purpose was religious, Ross.
Mm-hmm.
It goes on with
and by the way, I was just interviewed. I don't know where this article is or when it's coming out, but I told you about it. I got interviewed by some reporter who was doing a big deal on this red heifer thing.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that had him so interested that you're going to find in all of these articles, or at least some, is that some of Hamas said that the final straw that led to the October 7th attack was word on the street that Israel had snuck in these red heifers from Texas and planned on rebuilding the temple. And that's why they created Al-Aqsa flood and all these other things, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, and we talked about that at the time, didn't we?
That's right.
Here's another one, AAJ, by Sarah Munaf. Jews want to build a third temple. How far will they go? How far will they go, Ross? Priests who perform sacrifices at the temple had to be ceremonially pure, says the Old Testament. And this one is good. I'm going to read a bit from this. Subheading, Third Temple Construction and Heifers. Recently, Ross, there has been growing attention around several red heifers being raised in Israel. Their significance lies in the fact that one of the final hurdles to rebuilding the Jewish temple and the Temple Mount is obtaining the ashes of a red heifer, which are needed for ritual purification. Jewish rabbis, as opposed to, I don't know, what?
Other kind of rabbis, Christian rabbis, or...
Well, yeah, I guess there's those.
Yeah, there are those.
Have long taught that a red heifer, to qualify as unblemished, now here it is, its hairs must all be red. Even one single hair of a different color disqualifies the animal from use. On September the 15th, 2022, and all of a sudden, Ross, 5 young red heifers were brought into Israel from Texas. Okay, so it goes on and then talks about the third temple, Israeli-Palestinian conflict, blah, blah, blah. But this is the thing, and I'm kind of happy about this. This is the requirement imposed by the oral law and interpretation there of the rabbis upon the red heifer law, all but guarantees, I think, that this will not happen. What's your feeling?
I would just add to that. I'm going to put a link in the description of this video that we're talking now, and it was a class that I did on the red heifer, and I went into the Mishnah and read actually the dissenting arguments about whether it can have, more than one red hair, and this rabbi said this, and another rabbi said another thing, and one said that if even his hoofs have to be red, and on and on and on and on. So one side of me says exactly what you said. It's so difficult that it's never going to happen. As we say, Bessie is always going to be disqualified.
She's going to be safe. Yeah, she's safe.
But how many are still going? Because our friend Larry Borntrager, last I heard, he was babysitting the cows at Biblical Shiloh. That's where they are, right?
Now, I think last we talked about this, I think you said that you had learned that at least 2 of them had been disqualified.
I think it's 3 at least now, but I don't know.
So there might be 2 left. And understand, it takes a long time to look at every single hair on a cow, Ross.
Yeah. By the time you get to one end, the other end might have grown
might have grown
maybe
a gray hair.
You have more than one person looking.
Yeah,
but this is
we're
kind
of pluck them out.
No, but I don't know. Well, that's in that video I posted. But anyway, there is a big debate going on, and one of the things is that there is this. There were 9 previous ones that were sacrificed in history. This one, the final one, will be the 10th. And the 10th, one view is that it has to be, the new ashes have to be mixed with the ashes of the old, which fueled a big search by people like Vandor Jones.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Wait. Even if they find a qualifying red heifer, are you saying that the ashes of this red heifer have to be combined with the old ashes? Is that what you're telling me?
That is one of the views. Yes, that is definitely one of the views.
So that's an additional requirement.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that was an additional requirement.
Yeah.
Well, look, this is why we have verse 9. It says, a man who is clean shall gather up the ashes of the cow and deposit them outside the camp in a clean place to be kept, Ross, for water of lustration. So put that in the pantry in a jar because you're going to need it in the future. For the children, for the Israelite community, it is for cleansing. And what you're saying is that this is why Larry and Vendel Jones are searching. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, remember when we went to, you and I went in that cave near Qumran that is called the Cave of the Column?
Cave of the Column.
And remember Larry told us the story, and that that he and Vendel and others found within that cave what they believed. They're looking for a vessel. Now, all of this goes to, we don't have time to get into it all, but in the copper scroll discovered in 1952, engraved in copper, and we saw it on our tour in Jordan. Remember, in the Amman, in the museum in Amman.
Oh, that's right.
Anyway, it is supposedly, the copper scroll, a treasure map. And one of the things that it describes, it uses a generic term for vessel. Vendel Jones and the people who followed him believed, and many still do, that vessel is being described is the container of the ashes of the previous red heifer. So they wanted to find that in order that when the new heifer was sacrificed and burned outside the camp, that those ashes would be mixed with the other ashes. Now, here's the other reason that this is a prophetic hot potato, is you don't have to sacrifice this red heifer on the Temple Mount, so it doesn't matter that Al-Aqsa and that Muslims wouldn't allow this. You just go across the Kidron Valley, and you can sacrifice it right there, and voila, you're done. So there's a lot of concern.
Or on the Mount of Olives?
What's up
on
the Mount of Olives? You go through the Kidron, and that's where it's at. The place of, what is it, the Mikvah altar? Am I right? I can't remember.
Okay.
Anyway.
Sure.
Yep. So anyway, there's a lot of people. Now, what I see, like in Charisma and all these other, a lot of people believe this is a sign that the Messiah is coming because there's a prophecy that the red heifer has. None of that is true. There is no prophecy about a red heifer. There is no word in the prophets about sacrifice.
Taking all the fun out of it, Ross. Taking all the fun out of it.
You're right.
Come on now.
You're right.
Come on now. Actually, I think I can challenge that. And you know what? I had a conversation with my my buddies at the library, because this is the Reformed College. They're all Reformed, and I said, "So you guys, how do you view this? Is the ashes of the red heifer at all important? Is it needed to bring about prophecy? How do you do all of this? Because Calvin." It was big. I'm just going to say it. It's replacement theology at its best, and so what do you do with that? And then I'm thinking about that. No one really wanted to answer that, and I was thinking about it. And I'm thinking, because Ezekiel, the latter chapters of Ezekiel, we have the temple again in the prophecies, and we have the altar goes hot, right, and then sacrifices are being offered. But hang on, how can any of that happen without the water of purification? So I asked my my Reformed buddies about this, and they said, no, this is all figuratively speaking. This is a type and a shadow and a metaphor, and these, because Christ is the ultimate, and so there's no remedy. And I'm thinking, but surely there is. Surely, Ezekiel took this into consideration. Chapter 36, verse 24, I think it is, or is it 25? I want to know what you think of this. Is this actually it's not?
No, I don't know. Go ahead.
No, because I'm in two minds. Is this figuratively speaking, or is this Ezekiel saying, "Oh yeah, we get the water of purification, we do all the things with it, because then we go on and we have the new temple and the altar and blah 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 blah." So what it says is 36 verse 24. Yeah, okay. All right. 24. I will take you from among the nations and gather you from all the countries, and I will bring you back into your own land. Well, we've seen that happen. I will sprinkle clean water upon you, and you shall be clean, Ross. I will cleanse you from all your uncleanness and from your fetishes. I will give you a new heart, and I will put a new spirit in you. And I will, now obviously that's figurative. I will remove the heart of stone from your body and we're not talking about heart operation here.
Right.
And I will put my spirit in you. Thus, I will cause you to follow my laws and faithfully observe my rules. And then you shall dwell in the land that I gave your fathers, and so on and so forth. And then eventually it goes on to talk about the reinstitution of temple services, all that sort of stuff. Your thoughts?
Yeah, the question is, how picky do we have to be? Is it actually, maim to chorim, is that what is used in anything to do with numbers? And it's not. However, one could make that leap, and it wouldn't be too difficult. In fact, a lot of people say, look, it's obvious. If you're going to reinstate sacrifices, there has been death, and so we have to purify from death, and the only way to do that is a red heifer. Therefore, if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. So there is a conflation of ideas there. It's not a major leap, but so that's where people get it. But a lot of people, really base it on that idea. So we'll see. We'll see if this last red heifer, I think they've got one left. Maybe it's two. I should have called Larry. I should have just said, hey, man, what's going on with the red heifers?
I'd love to get an update from Larry. Maybe we can do that another time. But we did address this, Ross, in Bahar Alatecha just a few weeks ago. The Torah portion from Numbers chapter 8, verse 7, we talked about the water of purification. This magical concoction had already been used in Leviticus chapter 14, verse 5 and verse 50. It's also in Numbers chapter 5, verse 17. I think is that the spirit of jealousy? Was that one? Holy water, it was referred to there. And here in Numbers 19, we have it in verse 9, 13, 20, and 21. Now, 9.3, Ross, 19.3, let me go back there. You shall give it to Eleazar.
While you're doing that, I'm going to say, it is mixed with hyssop. And one of those wonderful Psalm 51 mentions, purge me with hyssop, and I shall be clean. Wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow. So there is this idea that hyssop is associated with cleanliness in terms of, like if you're asking for spiritual
something
cleanliness.
Magical about it. Yeah, it's also hyssop, is it not, that applies the blood to the doorposts in the Exodus story? But the verse you're referring to, 19:5, the whole cow, its blood, its dung, everything about the whole thing is reduced to ash, plus cedar wood, hyssop, and crimson stuff, scarlet wool,
right?
Whatever that is,
right?
And we see this magical combination mentioned 5 times in Leviticus 14, verses 4, 6, 49, 51, and 52. So there's something about that combination which means something to the priestly writer. But verse 3, give it to Eleazar the priest, and he shall bring her, this is the cow, outside the camp, and one shall kill her before his face. Well, what it has in 4Q27 Numbers, a Dead Sea Scroll, and they shall kill her from before his face. Who are they? They would be the Israelites that it refers to in verse 2. How would they do that? Are they all going to stone this? Maybe they stone it. Maybe they stone it to death. Because remember, they've got to burn they've got to reduce the blood to ashes, everything about it. So, but that is changed to one shall kill her in our canonical text. What else, Ross?
Man, I don't know. I guess we need to. Do we want to ask Ezra anything about the ashes of the red heifer?
Go ahead.
Let me just see. Let's see what
19.
Ezra. Yeah, let's try. Let's check Ezra.
Okay.
Ah, yes, the red heifer, para aduma, the ancient purification rite that stirs modern headlines every few years. In brief, the Torah describes a flawless red cow, never yoked, to be slaughtered outside the camp. The entire animal is burned, along with cedarwood, hyssop, and scarlet wool. Its ashes are collected and mixed with living water to create the purification waters. This was used to ritually cleanse anyone who had contact with the dead. Paradoxically, the one who prepares the ashes becomes impure in the process. A ritual designed to deal with death leaves a trace of death behind. Very priestly, very poetic. Now, as to your second question, there's no explicit biblical requirement that the ashes of a new heifer be mixed with ashes of a previous one. That idea shows up later in rabbinic tradition, not in the Torah text itself. The Torah seems content with the ashes being used as needed until they run out. And yes, about those red heifers brought to Israel. There's been chatter, especially among certain temple restoration movements. As of now, the latest public updates suggest the heifers are still being monitored for blemishes, any white or black hair, or any physical defect, and they're disqualified. It's a bit like raising a holy lottery ticket. Odds are slim and the bar is impossibly high. But here's the kicker. Even if they were perfect, there's no functioning priesthood, no altar outside the camp, no ritually clean Kohanim per biblical standards, and the entire Second Temple apparatus is gone. So we're in the realm of symbolic gestures and messianic anticipation, not Levitical practice. So, long story short, intriguing? Yes. Halakhically viable? Not remotely. At least not in the framework of biblical priesthood as it originally functioned.
No, that's it. Look, if I had to put $20 on it, Ross, I'm saying that it won't happen. That's where I'm putting my money. I agree with Ezra that the bar is impossibly high, and I was saying that even before you told me that that the new ashes have to be mixed with the old ashes. I mean, that's I didn't know that, and
that compounds the level of difficulty goes through the roof now, doesn't it?
Yeah, it goes through the roof. And as Ezra said, of course, there is no command in the Torah for that, but it doesn't matter because now we're dealing. I mean, there's no command to examine the poor animal with microscopes, but this is what we're doing. And I just don't see it happening. And I'll say, I think that's a good thing. From the perspective of the documentary hypothesis, we know that the priestly material is very, very late. It's not divinely imposed, and it's a good thing that we don't return to animal sacrifices. That is my conclusion.
It was Jeremiah's too, by the way. Jeremiah said that they didn't even have it in the wilderness. But go ahead. And Amos 5:25 says it too. Are we ready to jump into chapter 20 yet?
We are in chapter 20. We're in chapter 20, Ross, and let me see here. Get back to, where are my notes? Over here. All right. Okay, good. New moon. What month? We're in the new moon. I don't know what month we're in. And also Kadesh is now in the wilderness of Zin. What's going on, Ross? Come on.
Yeah, I tell you, it seems like we have different versions of, like, different memories of something that happens. Some of these stories seem to be repeating, don't they? We've got two stories that sound a whole lot alike, and there's staffs and bringing out water, and one you're supposed to hit it, and the other you're not supposed to hit it. You just talk to it, and yet he hits it in the second one. And some people even say, Jono, you're going to have to help me sort this out. They even say that this is the reason that Moses can't go into the promised land.
Right. That's right. And we needed a reason, apparently, because the Moses scroll does not supply one. We're going to talk about that. But Kadesh Barnea, only, what was it, last week or the week before? Kadesh was south of the Negev, below the mountain of the Amorites,
right?
Concurring with the current speculation of where Kadesh Barnea is. But now we're in the wilderness of Zin, and it is here that Miriam dies.
Yeah, we have been there. In fact, the wilderness of Zin is when you and I have spent a lot of time together at Biblical Tamar, and know, down below the Sea of Salt, the Dead Sea, and we've spent a lot of memorable hours there, studying and searching and taking off-road expeditions, and it's just a fascinating place, and it appears to be in that region. We may not be able to pinpoint exactly, but it's this area that these stories take place in.
I remember being there with you and Dave and Patty, and we were at the foot of Ma'aleh Rabim. Is that right?
Yeah,
we're at the foot
that's
of the
right.
ascent of the Scorpion. Right. There's that old Roman tax office there, and just a remarkable place to be, but it is in that vicinity, is it not, where the Wadi of Zin and these things may have occurred. So I remember that. Now, there's a lot of overlays, as you just suggested. There's a lot of repetition that seems to line up with Exodus chapter 17. What can you pull out of that?
Yeah, Exodus 17. I was going to open up just to Exodus 17:17 because that's one of the key texts. It's a very similar story, And most scholars would say, yeah, it's so similar that we believe that it's a different version of the same story. So, for instance, if you look at chapter 17 of Exodus, it begins from the wilderness of Sin. The whole congregation of the Israelites journeyed by stages. But look at verse 7. Let's start at verse 6. I will be standing there in front of you on the rock at Horeb. Strike the rock, and water will come out of it so the people may drink. And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. He called the place Massah and Meribah because the Israelites quarreled and tested the Lord, saying, is the Lord among us or not? This is interesting for a lot of reasons. One, we're not supposed to be at Horeb until we get to like chapter 19 and 20, and yet here we are in chapter 17, verse 6, we're at Horeb. So God is going to stand on a rock there, and he's going to strike it. But this isn't the only place that we encounter. This isn't the only place where we get Massah and Meribah. We also see Meribah where we're at in Numbers chapter 20. We see it in Deuteronomy 33:8. We see it in Psalm 81:7 and Psalm 95, verses 7 through 11. All of those passages deal with Meribah. But anyway, I think that we're clearly dealing with different versions of the same story. What do you think?
Oh, clearly. I really do think that that is the case. Yeah, I'd absolutely agree with that. 20 verse 8, the way that this is done, you and your brother, okay, so this is Jehovah speaks to Moses saying, you and your brother, Aaron, just in case we got his name, take the rod and assemble the community, and before their very eyes, order the rock to yield its water. Thus you shall produce water from them from the rock and provide drink for the congregations. Which staff, Ross? Moses' magic stick
Whose staff
or
is
Aaron's?
It? Yeah. I don't know. Whose staff is it?
Well, it doesn't specify, but it kind of gives us a clue. Verse 9, Moses took the rod from before the Lord as he had commanded him. So I'm assuming that this is Aaron's almond stick, isn't it, that budded. So it's got all these...
It just was in the story, so it would make sense. It's like you're talking about the stick, here's a stick.
That's what he's doing. So he's hitting the staff with that stick. And it seems to be the reason, like he doesn't do it quite right, and it may be the reason why he's not allowed to go into the land. So let me see, and it also seems like later on, and we're going to read this in verse 24, that the same fate of not being able to go into the land because something went wrong befalls Aaron as well. Although it's Moses that does all the talking here, so I'm not too sure how that works. Verse 11. This is, okay, let me read this. Moses raised his hand and struck the rock twice with his rod, and out came copious water in the community, and their beasts drank. So I don't know what it was like for you at school, Ross, but when I was at school, I remember, on hot summer days in Australia here, in Sydney, at the end of playing all through the day, and you're hot and sweaty, and the bell rings, you got minutes to go before you got to be back in the class, and everyone would line up to this one single bubbler that we had. We had like a little water spout thing.
Okay.
And everyone would try and get a quick drink, in the minutes to spare before you had to be back in class. And you're like, come on, move.
Hustle up.
I'm hot.
Yeah.
Sweaty here. But here in verse 11, all the people, Ross, which we're supposed to understand is 2 to 3 million, and all of their beasts, their cattle and their donkeys, everything, line up and get a drink. So says this.
So you think this would be even more of a line than what you had in middle school there in Australia?
It's a bit longer, and they are all going to be late to class, is my point. That's all I'm saying.
That's right. Hey, look, let me, before we get off of this, I mentioned Psalm 95. Listen to this. Do not be stubborn, verse 8, as at Meribah, as on the day of Massah in the wilderness when your fathers put me to the test, tried me, though they had seen my deeds. He goes on, 40 years I was provoked by that generation. This is the footnote. According to the JPS, the Jewish Study Bible, let's see, the traditions about Meribah and Massah are in Exodus 17:7, Deuteronomy 33:8. Compare Numbers 21, or 20, 1 through 13, there only Meribah alone. This psalm connects the 40 years of wandering to rebellion at these sites, in contrast to Numbers 14, 33, 34, and 32, 13, which connect the 40 years to the sin of the spies. On and on and on. So anyway, I wanted to read that because this note says you've got different traditions. One says that the 40-year wandering was directly a result of this challenging God, trying God at Massah and Meribah, whereas Numbers 13 and 14 say, no, that's not why they got 40 years. It was because of the spies. And we learned last week that some ancient stories, Deuteronomy 11 and Psalm 106, don't even mention the spies, right?
Yeah, quite right. And on that, in the Moses scroll, I believe it reads a little bit different again. It tells the people, okay, because of your sin, you didn't go up and take the hill country of the Amorites, fine, die where you are. And so it seems like they spend their time in Kadesh, however long that took, so that the men of the rebellion, quote unquote, pass from the camp before they move on. So that brings me to 12:12. Let's just go back one verse. The Lord said to Moses, because you did not trust me enough to affirm my sanctity in the sight of all Israelite people, therefore you shall not lead this congregation into the land that I have given them. But in the Moses scroll, Ross, it's a bit harsh, really. I mean, in the Moses scroll, it just says, look, I'm 120. This is HB 3 to 5 for those who have the Moses scroll. I'm 120 years old today. I don't know if it's his birthday, but
I think it is. I want to think it is.
I want to think it's his birthday.
Happy
He's
birthday,
120.
dear Moses.
To Moses. I am unable to go out or come in before you. That's the reason. That's the reason. I'm unable to go out. I'm done. I'm 120. Leave me alone. And
plus, he's been with them a long time, and they're nagging all the time.
Yeah, and I can't wait until you guys just leave me here. That's fine. I'm 120 years old today. I'm unable to go out or come in before you. And Elohim has said to me, you shall not cross the Jordan. You shall not. Yeah. That's all. It's not you have done something wrong and now he's 120. Leave him alone. He's 120 and he can't move anymore. All right. He's attended by some nurses there. Leave the poor guy alone. Joshua who stands before you. He will cross the Jordan and he will go into the land. And it's fine. This is fine. But that is the reason. But I can understand, Ross, that reading a text like that, little Jimmy would say to his grandfather, why can't Moses go into the land, not understanding he's 120 and he can't come in and go out?
Yeah.
And so a story evolves that wants to explain that. And this is what we end up with.
And by the way, we get an account. It's interesting. In Deuteronomy, we have 3 places where Moses says that God was mad at him, not because he struck a rock or he did anything like that. He says in 3 places in Deuteronomy on the account of the people, because of their crime, their sin, right? So so that's a difference, and that's one of the things that really sets Deuteronomy apart from Numbers and the wilderness tradition there.
Yeah, quite right. Hey, listen, just give me 1 second. I'm going to put the blind down because the sun is creeping in. As much as I love it, on a cold winter's day, I also like to look at my screen. Okay, that's good.
Okay, better. All right.
Here we go. Now, listen, where are we? Now we are okay, so 4Q27 numbers. It does have a lot to add to this section that isn't in our canonical text. And here at 20 verse 13, there is a whole lot added to this point. So it says, let's see, Moses said, Lord Jehovah, you have begun to show your servant your greatness and your strong hand. For what God is there under heaven and on earth who can act according to your works and according to your mighty deeds? Please, let me cross over and see that good land which is beyond the Jordan, those
what verse?
Good mountains.
Sorry, what verse?
And what's not in? You don't have it. This is in 4Q27 numbers.
Ah, okay.
This is additional information, and it's a big chunk of additional information. In fact, there's a lot that is added to this Dead Sea Scroll that we don't have in the canonical text. But it goes on to say, to the mountains and to Lebanon. But Jehovah said to Moses, enough! Speak to me no more about this matter. Go up to the top of Pisgah and lift your eyes to the west and the north and the south and the east, and see it with your own eyes. You shall not cross over this Jordan. But this, Ross, matches the Samaritan Pentateuch and borrows from Deuteronomy chapter 2 and chapter 3, none of which is derived from the Moses scroll.
Yeah.
All right. Anything you want to add there?
No, it's interesting. I thought I was going to find something very similar. There another version of what you just read is found in Numbers 27, where God tells Moses, "Going up the mountain to this Abarim range and see the land I've given to the Israelites. When you've seen it, you're going to die because you rebelled against me." So,
yeah, it's a bit rough.
Yeah, in other words, the story shows up again and again. That's the point.
It does, with subtle differences. We cried to the Lord, Ross, and he heard our plea, and he sent a messenger who freed us from Egypt. That's curious. That's verse 16. A messenger or an angel? What is this referring to? Do you have an opinion?
Well, I do know that in Deuteronomy we don't have an angel assisting, but in some of the other texts it does appear that we have angels helping.
This is true. That's right.
Exodus has an angel too.
20 verse 20. But they want to pass through Edom. And so let's see. Actually, let's go back. So from Kadesh, Moses sent messages to the king of Edom. Thus says your brother Israel. You know all the hardships that have befallen us, that our ancestors, and so on and so forth. Let us go through. Come on. Let us just, go through your just cross through the country. We won't pass through the fields or the vineyards. We won't drink your water from your wells. We will follow the king's highway. We've been on the king's highway.
That's right.
Turning off neither to the right or to the left until we've crossed your territory. But Edom answered, you shall not pass. You shall not pass through us, else we will come out against you with the sword. We will keep to the beaten track. And there is a question, Ross. Edom says you can't. You're just not doing that. We don't want you to do that. And the question is, well, how did they take this journey? And I don't know that the Moses scroll is clear about that either. But the question is, did they travel along the lower road along the Dead Sea, or did they somehow manage to get up behind Edom and travel the King's Highway to the east of these?
It's pretty hard to sneak about 3 million people by. I mean, you would think that would be a little bit tough to do.
So we have to imagine then that they just took the Dead Sea route, don't we?
Well, let me ask you this. It says in Numbers that, no, you can't come through my land, but is that what we get in Deuteronomy?
Well, that's the thing. So we have a few different. So let me just read what it says in the Moses scroll. It says, "And you dwelt in Kadesh Barnea until the men of the rebellion had completely died off from the midst of the camp. You are today." Goes on, and there's a few dots, right? So it probably says something like, "And then Elohim said to me, you are crossing today a border of the children of Esau, who dwell in Seir." Now it's never called, by the way, Edom in Deuteronomy or in the Moses scroll. Don't harass them. Don't strive against them in battle, because I didn't give you a possession from their land, because it was given as a possession to the sons of Esau. The Horites dwelt in it from antiquity, but the children of Esau dispossessed them, and they dwell in their stead. Okay, fine. So that's what the Moses scroll says. But it doesn't really answer the question, did they travel the King's Highway or the lower Dead Sea Scroll? I'm going with the latter. And to your point, and as I just mentioned, the children of Esau who dwell in Seir, the Moses scroll and Deuteronomy never refers to it as Edom. The use of Edom seems to be a latter designation for the term when it becomes known as the land of Edom. We see that in Genesis 32, chapter 36, Numbers 15, Numbers chapter 20 right here, chapter 21, 24, 33, 34, suggesting a later composition. Deuteronomy's law code refers to the Edomites in chapter 23, but we know that's a latter addition as well. Genesis 36 presents the Horites cohabiting with the Edomites. It also includes an anachronism in verse 31 that says, these are the kings that reigned in Edom before any kings reigned over the Israelites.
Clearly written after Israel has kings.
Clearly written after. So the verses that seem to cause confusion, Judges chapter 11, verses 15 to 22, and perhaps here, Numbers 21, verses 12 to 13, seem to side with the Moses scroll and Deuteronomy, and that the people skirted the border of Edom and Moab, not actually going through that land. But Deuteronomy chapter 2, verse 18 and verses 28 to 29, and Numbers chapter 33, verses 45 to 49, on the other hand, seem to have the people traveling through Edom and Moab. So there are conflicting reports. That's right.
Yeah, Deuteronomy 2, we don't even have to go to as far as 18 to tie in. One thing I had in my notes, it kind of goes along with this. The Lord says to Moses, now he's already been skirting Mount Seir for many days. Verse 3, you've been skirting the hill country long enough. Head north and charge the people as follows. You're about to pass through the territory of your kindred, the descendants of Esau. So here we've got God saying to Moses, you're about to pass through that land. He doesn't say you're about to ask permission and he's going to say no. See, so this is really clear. Look, who live in Seir, they will be afraid of you. So be very careful not to engage in battle with him. For I'll not give you even as much as a foot's length of their land, because I've given Mount Seir to Esau as a possession. Very closely worded, like you said, to what we see in the Moses scroll. You're going to purchase food from them. You can eat. You're going to purchase water so that you can drink. And then, it goes in and it describes this trip down to Ezion Geber and Eilat. It's just an odd, out of the place, and it doesn't match what we find in other records of the travels. One other point, we know that these texts are edited because look down at verse 10 of chapter 2. The Emim, a large and numerous people as tall as the Anakim, had formerly inhabited it. Like the Anakim, they are usually reckoned as Rephaim, though the Moabites call them Emim. Moreover, the Horim had formerly inhabited Seir, but the descendants of Esau dispossessed him, destroying them and settling in their place, as Israel has done in the land that the Lord gave them as a possession. Clearly written after Israel gained possession of the Holy Land. And they're on the border, so they haven't yet. So this is written later. So there's some editing that's gone into these texts, clearly.
There's certainly some editing. Verse 21, so Edom would not let Israel cross that territory, and Israel turned away from them, setting out from Kadesh. So Kadesh is down there now, and the Israelites arrived as a body at Mount Hor. Now, this is a curious thing. This is just a side note, but I found out just the other day, I didn't know this before, that Mount Hor is written differently in the Pentateuch to all other references to mountains. The word for mountain or hill, whatever, in Hebrew is har, right? And it's spelt the same way, just with different vowels, har and hor. So you would have ha-hor, you would have ha-horeb, ha-sinai, har, all of these. But everywhere, when it comes to hor, it is hor, ha-har, which is Hor, the mountain, which is weird. I don't know why that is. If anybody knows why that is, put it in the comments.
Yeah, no doubt.
I have no idea, but it's Numbers chapter 20, 21, 33, a couple of times in 33, 34, and Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 50, which is not derived from the Moses scroll. So curious thing, but consistent. And it's the only mountain that's written that way. So there you go. Now, Ross. As I mentioned before, Aaron, verse 24, it says, let Aaron be gathered to his kin. He is not to enter the land that I have assigned to the Israelite people because you, Moses, disobeyed my command about the waters of Meribah.
I bet Aaron was like, what?
You took my rod. It's my rod, my magic stick, and then you go and you stuff it up. And now I can't go. Wait, what?
Now is the you rebelled? Is it singular or plural? I didn't look at that.
I don't know. You have a look and let me know. But I think that Jehovah is speaking to Moses here.
Okay. Either way,
it gets worse. It gets worse for Aaron. Take Aaron and his son Eleazar and bring them up on Hor, the mount, and strip Aaron of his vestments and put them on his son Eleazar, and there Aaron shall be gathered unto the dead, which is a bit rough, really, because ordinarily the euphemism of gathered to your people or gathered to your fathers is used, which I kind of like is better.
Yeah,
but not Aaron.
Feels better.
He's just going to be gathered to the dead. All right. So, and that's Moses' fault for hitting the rock, I don't know, the wrong way or saying the wrong things with his magic stick.
Well, it brings up the question of where does Aaron die? And
where indeed?
I think it's important. We look at it. Moses did, verse 27, as the Lord had commanded. They went up Mount Hor in the sight of the whole congregation. Moses stripped Aaron of his vestments and put them on his son Eleazar. And Aaron died there on the top of the mountain. Moses and Eleazar came down from the mountain. And when all the congregation saw that Aaron had died, all the house of Israel mourned for Aaron 30 days. Now, look, that's not the place that Deuteronomy has of his death. And
Deuteronomy wants to play both. It wants to do a little bit of both of that, Ross. We have Deuteronomy chapter 10 and Deuteronomy chapter 32. Which one do you want to look at first?
Deuteronomy 10.
All right, let's look
at 10. There are a couple of different ways to look at this, but the first one is Deuteronomy 10, verse 6, which clearly 6 through, 9, is an interpolation. Because if you read verse 5, Moses says, "So I, first person, came down from the mountain and put the tablets in the ark that I had made, and there they are as the Lord commanded me. I stayed on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights as I'd done the first time." It goes better with what we read in the Moses scroll. But here is an insertion. Verse 6 through 9 describe a bit of the journey, which, by the way, doesn't line up with. It's close, but it has varying details with Numbers 33, which is supposed to be a chronicle of the journeys. But anyway, this says that the Israelites journeyed from Be'erot ben Yakin to Moserah. There Aaron died, and there he was buried. And his son succeeded him. But then again, if you look at verse 7 from Gudgoda and Jotbatah and all of that, those names are very close.
Gudgoda?
Gudgoda.
You're taking the fun out of it again, Ross. No,
Good God.
Good God. There he was. From there, they marched to good God.
Yeah.
And but Moserah.
Yep.
All right, but
so there we go.
If you keep reading, Ross, if you keep reading, and you go to chapter 32, verse 50, which again is not derived from the Moses scroll, neither is the other one. There's nothing of Aaron in the Moses scroll, of course. You shall die there on the mountain that you are about to ascend, and you shall be gathered to your kin. See, so now look, Moses gets to be gathered to his kin, whereas Aaron just gets gathered to the dead. As your brother Aaron died on Mount Hor and was gathered to his kin. Oh, well, okay. Well, here he's gathered to his kin, so that's a little bit nicer. But he died on Mount Hor in Deuteronomy chapter 32. Inconsistent is the word we would use.
There's one other thing we have to look at. Numbers 33.
Let's do it.
Numbers 33, if we look at, this is where the places, the order of the march is slightly different, the place is different again. But if you begin in Numbers 33, which is presented as a record of the journeyings or the pulling up of the stakes, look at verse 29. They set out from Mithkah and camped at Hashmonah. They set out from Hashmonah and camped at Moserot, very similar to what we saw earlier in Deuteronomy. They set out from Moserot and camped at Beni Yakin. Okay, that place is also named, different order. They set out from Beni Yakin and camped at Har Hagidgad, very close to Gudgoda. They set out from Har Hagidgad and camped at Jotbatah. There's another one. Okay, now look, skip down.
Well done.
Aaron the priest.
Yeah.
Aaron the priest, notice there, 37, they're at Kadesh. Anyway, Aaron the priest went up to Mount Hor at the command of the Lord and died there in the 40th year after the Israelites had come out of the land of Egypt on the first day of the 5th month. Aaron was 123 years old when he died on Mount Hor. The reason I bring this up is because we know he dies in Numbers chapter 20. In Numbers chapter 20, Aaron dies, and we just read that that's the 40th year. So that means, Jono, that when you're in chapter 10, verse 11 of Numbers, and you find out you're in the second year, and then the chapters 13 and 14 are also in the second year. Chapter 15 is a text that deals with sacrifices, could be written about anything. 16 and 17 are undated. But the bottom line is we seem to only have information really heavy in year 2 and year 40. I wanted to ask Ezra if I'm right in seeing that, or if perhaps I've missed a date. In other words, how much of this 40-year period seems to be covered in the book of Numbers?
You're not seeing things. It's one of the most striking narrative gaps in the Torah. Numbers gives us detailed snapshots from the second year in the wilderness, then skips almost the entire intervening 38 years, landing us squarely in the 40th year with barely a narrative whisper in between. You're right. The spy narrative in chapters 13 to 14 marks the national failure that dooms the Exodus generation. That's still firmly in year 2. Then we get some rebellion stories, some legal inserts, but the timestamp doesn't budge much. Suddenly, in chapter 20, Miriam dies, and by the end of the chapter, Aaron's gone too, with the text plainly stating it's year 40. Just like that, decades are gone. The itinerary in chapter 33 does list all the stops, but it's more of a travelogue than a story. It doesn't give us drama, dialogue, or events. It reads like editorial scaffolding, possibly added by the priestly redactor to tie the wilderness wanderings together, but without filling in the historical content. Scholars point to this as deliberate. The Torah isn't interested in daily life in the wilderness. Those years are portrayed as a suspended time, a death march in theological slow motion. The focus remains on the moments that frame the generation's judgment and the emergence of a new one. So yes, Numbers is bookended by years 2 and 40. The gap isn't accidental, it's theological. Israel is in a holding pattern, and the text doesn't bother pretending otherwise.
I didn't think I was seeing things.
No, absolutely not. And again, I really do think it's because if the Moses Scroll is what it claims to be, if it is the original document, it has the men of the rebellion. Everyone's staying in Kadesh Barnea until those men of the rebellion have perished from amidst the camp, and then they move on to the that journey towards the other side of the Jordan, the other side of the Dead Sea, and maybe that took 40 years. The Moses Scroll doesn't mention anything about 40 years, but it does create a vacuum if you understand if there is a misreading, and it's obviously possible to make a misreading there, that God commands them to head out into the wilderness until the men have perished, the men of the rebellion. We've talked about that before, but having to fill that vacuum explains why you start with 2 years of a little bit of information here, and then we don't know what happened exactly, but then now we're at year 40, and we know that we pick up here in Moses and everyone's on the other side. So I think that's how that happened. That's where I'm going to put my chips.
All right.
Let me see now, Ross. We're in chapter...
We're in 21.
We're in 21. Tell us about Arad, because you and I have been there a number of times. It is a fascinating place in the Negev. But yeah, go ahead. It's just that I'm going to say that some archaeologists, according to Alta, say that Arad had not been settled at this time. What's going on?
Yeah, what we do know is that the site that is currently called Arad, when we go there, we have archaeological evidence that at least goes back to biblical times. Perhaps not to the Bronze Age. I think that's the question. That is what Alter brings up in the comment that you showed me in his work. So while that is debated, Arad at least figures prominently, say, by the Iron Age. And so I think when you and I went, we walked around, and that's most of the ruins at that place, isn't it? Was it? Do you remember? Yeah. So some people would say, well, I mean, could it have been in that area? Could biblical Arad from the Bronze Age have been in that area? One thing I've often thought about is if it was in that vicinity, which we know exactly where that is, then certainly people who think that the Israelites are way in the south, going all the way around by the traditional Mount Sinai, going that southern route, that can't be it, because the king of Arad says, when he sees the Israelites coming, you know what I'm saying? So it's like he couldn't possibly have seen. He might have heard, but he didn't see them. Anyway, but it is a cool site. It's an interesting site to go visit.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm just looking at this. Let's see. So the Canaanite king of Arad, who dwelt in the Negev, learned that Israel was coming by the way of Azarim. He engaged in battle. He engaged Israel in battle, took some of them captive, Ross, and so on and so forth. And I think, if I remember correctly, the note that Alter makes, he says that this doesn't add up. It's like an interpolation, but it seems like it's fragmentary historic. It has like a conglomerate of fragmentary historical memories.
What page is it? Because I'll look.
550, page 550. Have a look at that, because when I read that, I thought, well, one of those fragmentary historical memories could well be the Moses Scroll, because the Moses Scroll has in DC 1 and 2, it says, I sent men from you to battle the Midianites in this case, and you smote them with the edge of the sword, and you captured from them very many captives. So a lot of the same ingredients are right there. 550 on verse.
Here it is. It says, you remembered it fairly well. It says, let me find the exact quote. Okay, here we go. The whole account here of battles and conquest around the southern and eastern perimeters of Canaan appear to be a complicated interweaving of retrojections from a later period with fragmentary historical memories. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So, like I said, the Moses Scroll, has such verses where you could think, I could take a little bit of that and turn it into this, and it's just sort of a weaving together. Then we are in the land of the Nuhashtan. Is that right? The copper.
Yes,
copper serpent.
Indeed.
All right, Ross. We've
by the
done
way,
a whole
that's
program on that.
And I am going to teach that very subject this coming Sabbath. So I want to encourage everybody to join me for that, because that's what I want to talk about. We have done a show. The link to that show will be in the description, and then I'll teach another class on that Saturday. So,
all right. Well, that's good. We need not dwell on that, except to say that they propped up a copper serpent on a pole. If you get bitten by a snake, look at the snake on the pole, and everything will be fine.
Some of the hair of the dog that bit you. Some of the hair of the dog that bit you.
And I really, I just cannot help but think, and I really think this is true, they, over time, were worshipping this thing, and they needed a reason to continue worshipping it, and what better way to do that than to just retroject a story into the story of Moses, that this, give it a kosher stamp so we can keep doing it. But it was Hezekiah, Ross, right, in 2 Kings chapter 18, verse 4, that said, what do we do? Smash that thing to pieces. There's a little bit of idolatry going on there.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to show just how much idolatry it is Saturday.
All right, Saturday, that's that. And now we are in verse 10 and 11. We find ourselves at Yeravot, which you and I, we've been there many times. I miss it out in the desert. Did I tell you I was talking to David the other day? A buddy that looks after the place.
Oh, yeah. David Connolly.
Connolly, he's not there at the moment, but he is going back. He intends to go back soon. And I was thinking, maybe we're going to catch up this November. But obviously, considering what's going on in the land right now, we have had to postpone, dear viewers, our tour until 2026. So if you were disappointed that you couldn't join us this year, you can sign up for the tour. We're postponed to 2026 for Tanakh tours. And maybe we'll catch up with David there, but in Yeravot. But, we find ourselves here on the journey. Your thoughts?
Oh, I love this part, especially one of the things, and we'll tie this all together. I'll talk about it Saturday, but you and I have been to this place. Right across in Jordan, in this area, is a major copper smelting. We have a copper smelting location on this side, on the Israel side, right there near Ovot. That's right, and we've gotten some pieces of copper that were ancient, that were smelted there. Anyway, but what I love about this is because it comes into the place where our Moses scroll was discovered. When they set out from the Wadi Zered, they go to, on the other side of the Arnon, in the wilderness that extends from the boundary of the Amorites. Arnon is the boundary of Moab. So you have Moab and the Amorites. And then I love this quote from the Book of the Wars of the Lord, which we don't have this. I know you can, people say you can buy it on Amazon.
Right.
Wahib and Sufa and the wadis, the Arnon and the slopes of the wadis that extend to the seat of Ar and lie along the border of Moab. From there they continued to Be'er. We get this little quote from the book of the Wars of the Lord, or the scroll of the Wars of the Lord.
Really?
And it's just really cool. And a lot of scholars believe that this is some of the oldest literature that we find in the Pentateuch, because it's quoting, whenever it's written, it's quoting a source which is probably ancient at that time. I find it fascinating. Yeah.
I'll tell you what else is fascinating, is that right here as well in verse 13, 4Q27 Numbers has a whole lot to add. And it goes on to say, Jehovah said to Moses, don't bother Moab, neither contend with them in battle, for I didn't give you any of this land as a possession, because I gave Ar to the children of Lot for a possession. We're familiar with that because it is in the Moses scroll. It's also in Deuteronomy.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
And from there, they traveled and encamped in the valley of Zered. As you just read, that part there is in our canonical text. But then it goes on. So that was verse 12, is what 4Q27 Numbers adds. In verse 13, it adds, and Jehovah said to Moses, you are now passing over Ar, the border of Moab. Today, when you come near the border of the children of Ammon, don't bother them, don't contend with them. I didn't give you any of this land of the children of Ammon as possession, because I gave it to the children of Lot as a possession. From there they traveled, and then we return to the canonical text. From there they traveled and encamped on the other side of the Arnon. Again, this matches the Samaritan Pentateuch in Deuteronomy chapter 2. But both of these additions are derived from the Moses scroll. Yeah. Yeah, so Book of the Wars of the Lord, we've done that. Oh, then we get to, unless you want to add something, I'm going to jump to 2120. Can I do that? Okay.
Yeah.
So again, 4Q27 Numbers, it reads this way. And this is in our canonical text. And from Bamot to the valley that is in the field of Moab, to the top of Pisgah, which looks down on the desert. Verse 21 adds our Dead Sea Scroll. And Jehovah said to Moses, rise up and take your journey and pass over the valley of Arnon. Behold, I have given into your hand Sihon the Amorite, king of Heshbon, and his land. Begin to possess it and contend with him in battle. Today I will begin to put the dread of you and the fear of you on the peoples who are under the whole sky, who shall hear the report of you and shall tremble and be in anguish because of you. And then in returning to our canonical text, Israel sent messages to Sihon, king of the Amorites, saying, ... But that whole addition that I read you that appears in the Dead Sea Scroll, matching the Samaritan Pentateuch. We have to do more on the Samaritan Pentateuch, I'm convinced. I have to read through this and pay more attention to it. But also Deuteronomy chapter 2, verse 24 to 25, and derived again from the Moses scroll. Ross?
Yes.
Sending messages of peace to Sihon, king of the Amorites?
Well, you have to, Jono, because the law code in Deuteronomy 20 says that you have to send messages of peace before you attack a potential enemy. And everyone knows that once you have the law code in Deuteronomy 20, you have to do this. Yeah. Isn't that right? I mean...
Well, this is right, because this, of course, in the whole law code, chapters 12 to 26 of Deuteronomy, is the Josiah New Revised Version, if you like, sewn into the Moses scroll. It's not derived from the Moses scroll, but now that it's there, you got to make everything fit. So we have to write this bit in here just to make sure that Moses isn't doing anything that is contrary to that which he supposedly wrote, right? And so it's injected here. All right, there we go.
Interesting.
Now, very interesting. What else do I have? 2132. Is there anything else that you wanted to pull out here?
No, just some more good songs. I mean, I encourage people to read those songs, but if you look, there's some overlap here, because by the time Jeremiah is written, speaking of the Josiah Revised Version, you have quite a bit about Moab and the king and the god Chemosh, and we find this god's name in the Mesha Stela, which I'm doing research on now in conjunction with a work I'm presently working on. But so here you have the name of that god who is inscribed on the Moabite stone, And it's just kind of interesting. But I in my notes it says, I'm not going to get into it here, but if you read in Jeremiah, you'll see some very similar language. Like it's reminiscent of this particular song, I guess you could say. Verse 27, therefore the ballad singers say, come to Heshbon, let it be built, on and on and on. So,
yeah. And so here our Torah portion again closes out with a big chunk of the Moses scroll, and that is in our canonical text. It's really fascinating to me, Ross. The only book in the library where I go and conduct the research was a book written by, I think the foreword was by James Orr, and it was from 1911. And, of course, this is prior to the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls. And the apologetics are, the Samaritan Pentateuch, come on, no, don't worry about it, our canonical text, right? It's all good. But now that we have the Dead Sea Scrolls, we see that the Dead Sea Scrolls is quoting from, it appears to be quoting from the Samaritan Pentateuch, or we find an enormous amount that is in common. And a lot of those passages that are sewn into the text that are missing from our canonical text are passages that are derived from the Moses scrolls. So I find it interesting. I got to spend more time reading up on that when I get a chance.
Okay.
Right.
I appreciate the insights. I know you've done a lot of research this week and with the various Dead Sea Scrolls that you're bringing in, because that's one of the goals. We're trying to bring those, when we think about critical textual studies, what do some of these other texts say? So I hope everyone else appreciates, I do, Jono, that you're bringing in the Samaritan Pentateuch and these various 4Q manuscripts. It's always helpful to kind of open up our understanding. Where do these writers get these various ideas from? So
yeah, no, it is fascinating. Balak, another great story. That's where we're going to find ourselves. Chapter 22, verse 2, it picks up. And it used to be, I got to say, one of my favorite narratives. It is a cool narrative, got to say.
I like it. And can we tell them next week? Can we tell them about the red-lettered edition that we saw that actually appears to be the historical Bilam? This is a true story, and or it appears to be a true story, and it's written on the walls of an ancient discovered place. And we've been there. We've seen it.
We're going to touch on that next week. That is chapter 22 of Numbers. We're ripping through it. So if you don't already have your Torah tablet of Deuteronomy,
that's right.
Get it. There's a link underneath this video, and you'll get it in time. And
that's right.
You'll be following through with us. All right. Anything else, Ross?
No, I'm ready for Ezra to summarize us.
Come on,
summarize
Ezra.
And yeah, all right.
Sign us out.
Well, folks, that's a wrap on Chukkat, ashes, serpents, striking rocks, and a 38-year narrative silence, all packed into one portion. If you've enjoyed wandering through the wilderness with us today, don't keep it to yourself. Invite a friend, a fellow Bible nerd, or even that one uncle who still insists Moses was left-handed. There's always room in the camp for more curious minds. Until next time, keep your sandals dusty and your questions honest. We'll see you in the next portion. Shalom and safe travels through the text.